All right, welcome everybody to today's live webinar. We are covering Intro to Digital File Storage. So before I introduce Susan Winkler, our technology librarian, I'd also like to point out that we have someone joining us today. Chris is here joining us as a practicum student from the U of I's iSchool. So she will be helping us teach a portion of today's webinar. Let me also talk about Zoom here while you're in the Zoom environment. So if you hover your mouse near the bottom of your Zoom screen, you're going to see some controls pop up. So more towards the bottom left side is going to be your Zoom audio controls, so you can control your speaker or your microphone. We'll talk more about how to talk later as well. You'll also notice in the middle of your Zoom screen is a chat bubble. If you click on that chat bubble, you'll be able to ask us a question. So while Susan and Chris are teaching the class, you can always pop into chat and type a question in. I'll be in the background helping to answer those questions or posing them to Chris or to Susan. Throughout, don't feel like you're interrupting. Ask us questions. That's the main thing. We're here to help you, so don't feel like you're interrupting us or anything like that. There is also a raise hand button right in sort of near the chat bubble. If you click that raise your hand button, it will let us know that you would rather speak your question out loud than typing it in the chat. So I know you maybe have a more in-depth question or you don't want to type it out. If you raise your hand, we'll let you speak through your microphone. And yeah, let me just make sure I didn't forget anything in my little intro here. Also, we are going to have a handout that I'm going to put into the chat. So that handout will link you to the slides that will be covered during today's webinar. We'll also send that handout in the email that comes after our webinar is over. So we'll have the link to the recording that we'll make today as well as the handout. So don't feel like you're going to miss out if you don't get that for today. Okay, I think without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce Susan and Chris. How are you guys today?
Hi,
Great.
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Chris?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good, excellent. All right. Well, I was going to mention too for Rebecca as well that we do, while we're doing the recording, you'll be able to see our videos. So you'll see Rebecca, myself, and Chris, but we don't see your videos. So we don't see anything behind the scenes for you. If you want to ask a question, it'll be verbal or through chat. Your videos are not on. Okay. And we will send out a link to the video that we've recorded with a follow-up email that will also include a digital copy of the handout. Okay. Had you said that, Rebecca? You might have said that and I missed that.
I did. I did say that.
So, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here and share my screen. So we can take a look at our PowerPoint. It's going to get a little meta for a second because we are using the desktop version here, or rather the browser version, so that you can see my desktop screen as well. So let me go ahead and jump in from the beginning. Oh, come on. Come on. Okay, maybe not. Anybody see it from the beginning?
No, it's having a Monday.
It's showing
It is
the
having a
front
Monday.
slide of your PowerPoint.
Yeah, it didn't want to go from, let's go from current slide and try that instead. Come on.
No, it's not doing it.
Okay, well, we'll you know, sometimes tech just doesn't always cooperate the way we want it to.
What if you closed
everything.
it and opened it back
So
up again?
let me, yep, I was just going to say, let me try and reopen it here and see if we can get a little bit better. Let's see if I can go. Nope. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do from this direction then. Let me see if I hit nope. Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and do it from this direction here, and I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see things a little bit better there. Okay. Now we'll just get a start this way, and we won't be using the PowerPoint the whole time, and we'll be switching back and forth. So once we do live demos and stuff, this part won't really matter anyway. But Intro to Digital File Storage is what we're covering today. We're going to talk about the concepts. We're going to talk about creating a file and folder, which is review from last week. So if you attended last week, this first part is a refresher. How to copy and move files or folders. And that's going to become important when we talk about storage, because if you want to mimic the storage organization system that you have on your desktop computer when you put something, say, into the cloud or onto an external memory stick or external hard drive. You want to also know how to be able to copy and move things and continue with that structure. So then we'll talk a little bit about file terms, sort of the language that we use, the vocabulary words, because of course with technology, it is a language unto itself. So in order to, you have to know the right words to be able to get help too. So then we'll talk about what file sizes are, common types and extensions. And then we'll go into a little bit more about File Explorer. We covered that just briefly last week with a little navigation, but we'll go through a little bit of review about File Explorer. And then we'll move into talking about sorting and viewing files. We'll talk about your computer that you might have, like your laptop or your tablet, perhaps, if you're on a tablet, and how much storage space you have with those and how to tell how much storage space you have. We'll talk about the recycle bin, downloading and uploading files and where they go. And then at the end, we'll talk about storage considerations, things to think about, the types of storage options that you have. And then we'll have a little bit at the end where we'll talk about sort of the grand overarching things that you'll want to consider when you look into what kind of file storage system you want to use. And then we'll have a little bit of time for additional resources. All right, so that's our agenda for today. And I'm actually going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn things over to Chris so that she can go over how to create a file and create folders and move and copy things. And we'll see if she has better luck getting her PowerPoint to do a full slide for us. Another advantage of team teaching today.
Okay. And am I sharing? Am I live?
Not yet.
Go to the PowerPoint. Can you see me?
There you go. Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm going to see if I can make the slideshow go.
Yay. Okay.
Yay. Okay, awesome.
Alrighty.
So let me start by saying that this is like Susan said, it was a review from last week. This is, I think, the fourth of our 4 classes in this kind of progression of, we started with really simple things that if you don't have a lot of experience with a computer, that, this is where you're going to start, and it's just basic building blocks, and we learn, and everything kind of grows on each other and gets slightly more complicated as we go along. That's going to happen today. I'm going to go through the first few slides pretty quickly because this is what we covered last week. If you need to see this again or didn't see it last week and want to see it before you do this class, that's totally fine. They're posted on our website, and as they said, we send out an email after the class with a link to that video. If you can just click right to it and go to the video and watch it again. Sometimes if I'm trying to learn something new, I'll watch the YouTube video and I'll hear what the instructor has to say, and then I'll pause it, and then I'll go try it myself, and maybe I understand, maybe I don't, and I rewind them and listen again. And it's a great way to learn things, and you'll be able to do that with both last week's video and this one if you need to. So don't worry about that if that's where you're at, and that's where you're at. So today we're going to talk about creating a file. Last week, we showed you a couple different ways to find the Word program. It's the closest thing to a blank page. If you want to write a letter or a document, resume, research paper, anything that you want to write, start with a blank piece of paper, then Word is the place to go. And down at the bottom of the screen is a place, if you ever see the little magnifying glass, sometimes if you see it and it has a plus minus sign, then it means something else. But if you see the magnifying glass and a little blank space beside it, it means we're going to search for something. We're looking for something. So we want to find Word. It'll pop up and say, is this what you want? And then you can click on it and open the program. And then it will say, what kind of document do you want to create? And we started with a blank document last time, but it's kind of fun sometime. The newer versions of Word will have suggestions, as you can see here, of resumes or different kinds of letters or different kinds of documents that maybe you might find useful in the future. So someday if you just have time to sit and kind of go through them and see what's offered, might be useful. But we started with a blank document, and then open it up, and it's just a piece of paper. And you can type whatever you want to in it. And then we want to keep this piece of paper for later. We might add more to it later. We might change it. We might just want to open it and print it again, or remind ourselves what we wrote, whatever reason. We want to save it. So as we said last week, it's kind of like taking your pieces of paper of your important stuff, important business or records or whatever, and putting them in a filing cabinet. And so you want to tell the computer where to put the letter and what to call it. That's the two parts of how a computer knows what that file is and where it is you have to give it the address and then what you want to name it. So we go up to the File menu, which is all the way up here in the little corner of our document. And I'll show you all this in a minute. We'll just go through it really quick. And when we click on that, it's going to give us a menu. And now we covered last week the difference between save and save as. So again, if you missed it for last week and want to go back and review, that's totally fine. I'll cover it really quickly though. Save as says, I want to create a completely new document. I want you to take everything that's in the document right now and save it under a certain name. And whether this is a brand new document we just started today, or it's an old one that we made some changes to, but we want to keep it separate and make it a whole new document, then save as is what we want to use. Versus if we have a document we're working in and we want to make some changes and keep those changes forever, then we'd use save. And it overwrites everything that we had before, and what's in the document now is what we've got to go with. That makes sense? We're going to tell it where we want to put it, what will be the file's address. This PC is a pretty common place, and everybody's Microsoft Windows computer should have that. The desktop is a good place to start when you're coming up with your system of where you're going to keep things, so you can find them again later easily. The desktop is kind of like your desktop of your where your computer is sitting right now. It's the stuff that you keep out instead of putting them in a drawer every time, because you're going to use it all the time. So you'll put it on the desktop and then it's right there when you want it. So we've told it where to put it. I want to put it on the desktop, and then I have to say what I want to call it. That's the two parts. And then we hit save. Now let's take a break from this just for a second, and I'm going to go a really quick example to show you how it's working. Does everybody see my screen? This is my desktop.
Yes.
And if we can see that right here, I have a little shortcut, which we talked about last week also, that would take me straight to that Word program if I want to. But this is where I was talking about if it's not there, if the little Word shortcut is not on your desktop, you can put the program you want in here and it'll show up. And you can click either open or just click on this. We made a blank document. Last week I made a letter to my sister. My sister Renee, she's awesome. And now I need to save. Now we started with a brand new document, so I need to make a whole new one. So save as. This PC is good. I want to put it on the desktop. It's going to give me a suggestion for what I might want to call it. It's usually just the first few words that you typed. And I'm going to call it letter to Renee. It needs to be something that you will remember. I might want to say letter to Renee, September 2021, or even, what's the date today, the 28th? September 28th, 2021. Whatever will make it so that later on, I look at that title and I know what's in that document. Whatever makes sense to you and that you can remember. So now here's my document. I'll finish this letter later because I don't have time right now. And then you'll look on your desktop, and in the first available space, there's my file I just created. Ta-da. Okay. So now let's go back to our PowerPoint for just a second. We're going to say that over time, I made a lot of letters. And as you can tell, with all those icons, all those little pictures on the screen, after a while, if you just keep putting things on that same desktop, it gets crowded, and pretty soon it's hard to find things. If you put everything, all your different pieces of paper that you're going to put in your filing cabinet in the same drawer, then after a while, when you want to go find one of those pieces of paper, you have to go through all of them to find the one, and that's not efficient, and it takes a long time. So what we can do is make little file folders. Little folders that we can put on the desktop or wherever we want to put them, and put documents in to kind of sort them into groups. So you would click on, there's different ways to do it, but one way to do it is to click on the blank empty space of your desktop, which might be blue. Some people put a picture here. Sometimes there are designs. So whatever this picture is, even if yours doesn't look like that, that's okay. You will put the arrow on this desktop. You'll hit the right button, which means menu. The right mouse button. And we talked about that in, I think that was our first class or maybe the second one. So again, if you need to review that, you can go back and review that. No big deal. So you're going to hit the right button, which means menu, and you're going to see all the stuff you can do with whatever your mouse is pointing to. So in this space, we can put a new folder, and then that's what we will do. And it should be, so let's put, say that we have this letter here, and we have a bunch of letters. So here's our empty space. This is our desktop. I'm going to click the right mouse button. I'm going to go down to New Folder. And you can see that it's highlighted there. And from there, I can put letters or, you know, whatever I want to say, whatever I want to call this folder. If I decide, you know what, I need more words in there, or if, for example, if you make a new folder, same process, and before you get a chance to say what you wanted to say, you click somewhere else and uh-oh, it's not highlighted anymore. There's a way to fix that. We're going to point to our folder. We're going to right click. Again, that's the menu button to see what we can do with a folder. All the way down to the bottom, rename letters to Renee. And now we're going to talk about moving files and folders. Now that we have them here, we want to put them where we want them. I'm going to show you this on the computer first, and then we'll go back to the slides, and I think it'll make a little more sense. So I have my letters to Renee here. Here's the folder. If I want this folder to be over here to the side, all I have to do is take the mouse and put it right over this folder. And I'm going to click down on the left mouse button, and I'm going to hold it just one time and hold it. And then I can move the file around. And wherever I drop it, wherever I let go of the button, that's where it's going to move the folders to. Okay. What if we did that to a file? Here's our file, letters to Renee. Again, left mouse button, one click and hold. Pull it over here. I can set it right here next to this file folder, but what I really like to do is put it inside. So I'm going to put the mouse over it, left click, hold, drag it, drop it. Now, here's my folder, and I know that when I open this, all the different files in here will be letters to Renee. And which will be useful if there was 30 of them, of course, because then they aren't all over my desktop. I can just have it in one little icon. If I decide that I want to write a letter to my sister Anita as well, I can start with the letter that I've already got. I can I can do the right mouse button, which is the menu, right? It's all the things I can do with this one file. I can copy it. I'm going to click down here in the folder to say I want it in the same folder. For now, I might move it because we know how to do that, right? We're going to do our the right mouse button for the menu. Right mouse button is the menu. And paste. It says letter to Renee, September 28th, 2021, -copy. As we talked about last week, it would I could put this file anywhere else on the computer with the same name, or if it's in the same folder, if it has the same address, it has to have a different name. So it won't let me name these two files the same thing. I want to make this a letter to Anita. So just like we did with the file folder, right click. What can I do with this file? I can rename it. I'm going to get rid of that copy, but I need to change something else. Anita. Now I have two copies of the same letter. I can go in, change to Anita's name. Now I've already created a new file. This is the letter to Anita. I don't need to make another copy of this. I just want to save the change I already made. So I can go File and Save. Or I can just go up to this little icon up here in the corner and click it once, and that saves. So whatever's in here is my new file from now on until I change it and save it again. We talked about that a little bit more detail last week, so if you want to review that, then you can. Lastly, we're going to talk about copying folders, because you can do the exact same thing that you saw me do, where I copied that letter and made a whole new letter that was out to Renee. Let's say that my good friend Joan Smith is going to apply to Walmart. She has her cover letter and her resume. Now what she'd like to do is also apply to Target. Don't tell Walmart. So we're going to right click as menu. What can I do with this folder that has a couple files in it? I want to copy the whole thing, the folder and all the files into it, right here next to it on the desktop. Paste. And there we have it. This is my application. This is my folder of my application. It's a complete, exact 100% copy of this other thing until I change its name. I can go into here. Oops. And rename it to Target. And to Target. I go in and make the changes in the files and save them and print them and send them off, and good to go. Susan told us last week how she has to do a report every month, and it's basically the same report. It's just a few things are changed. So she makes a copy of the old report, changes the name to the current month, changes a few things in the file, saves it, report done. So that's one example of when you can use copying a whole file or a whole folder to help you, and you'll be very efficient. So we'll review that super quick, and we'll get on to the new stuff. Moving files, also called drag and drop. Left click, one click and hold, drag it where you want it, let it go. Selecting either a file or a whole folder full of files. Getting right click to get my menu. Going to copy. Oop, I might have gone too many. There we go. Decide where I want to put it. Right click to that spot and hit paste. And then you have a new one, and it will have a little dashed copy on it so you know which one's the original and which one's the new one. Any questions on that stuff right now?
I don't see any questions so far.
Okay.
I think you're good.
Okay, so let's talk about some new stuff. So we'll talk about the stuff, and if you're interested in it and it's something you want to know why something's the way it is or why it's become this way, you can Google this, you can find books on this, but in the end, you don't need to understand a lot of this stuff, or why is a kilobyte 1,024 bytes, unless you really want to, because it'll work one way or the other, right? So a computer has a tiny little bit of data. It's in ones and zeros, if you've heard that term. It's binary. It's how computer language was originally written. So the smallest unit is a bit. 8 bits makes a byte. And then you've seen probably like KB or MB or GB when seeing how big a file is. If you've ever tried to upload a photo to something, to email, you want to email a photo to someone, and your email says, sorry, this is bigger than 2 gigabytes, you can't attach it. Then that's what they're talking about, is how big your file is, how many bits are in there. Because some places where you want to upload a file or download a file, there are limits to how big they can be. So this is kind of the order it goes in, kind of like you have 1,000, a million, a billion. It's very similar. It's kilobyte, then it goes megabyte, then it goes gigabyte, and then terabyte. I don't think they've gone up higher than that. They probably have, but those of us normal people out here in the world don't need to know.
Yeah, unless you're doing massive supercomputing, terabytes probably as high as you're going to get.
As high as you're going to get, right? So if you have this is the chart over on the side shows you some examples. I've seen how a photo that I will take and I'll look and see that it's 7 millibytes, and I'm like, wow, that's a big folder. But it can add quickly depending on what the settings you have your phone or your camera set to, so that it takes a really, really high quality photo or really kind of grainy photo. The grainy photo will be smaller, and the really high quality photo will be really big. So there are times when you might need both of those. So you have a file type, right? I've been talking a lot about pictures because a lot of us deal with pictures a lot. You have pictures, files that are basically like a piece of paper. You have files that are that are basically a spreadsheet. There's all kinds of different types of files. And the way that you can figure out what kind of file you're looking at is to look for the 3 or 4 letters that are after the dot, right at the end of your file name. So the 3 or 4 letters or numbers that are there are going to be different, and it depends on what kind of file it is. And you're trying to tell your computer, so your computer can recognize, what program do I need to use to open it? Is this a file that's like a piece of paper and I need to use Microsoft Word or Notepad? .text, the .txt, as you can see there in the example, or .doc, sometimes says doc, sometimes says docx. Those are files that are most like a piece of paper, and the computer knows, oh, I need to use Word to open this. We're going to show you now how you can see for any file that's on your computer, any one of them at all, what kind of extension it has, so what kind of file type it is. You can put your mouse over whatever it is you want to find out what kind of file is that. And you can right mouse click to get the menu, right click is menu, and you're going to come all the way down to the bottom where it says properties. And you click on that once, and a little box will pop up, and it will say, this is the type of file, Microsoft Word document, .docx. Opens with Microsoft Word. Now, if I have a different kind of word processing software that I like to use, I can tell the computer, hey, if you ever see this type of file, I want you to use a different program to open it. But most of the time, our computers are already set up. They come with what they call a default, where the computer already knows for the docx type, this is what I'm going to start with. You can change it later, but I already know that this is the program I need to use. It's going to say location, right? The address. Where does it live? How big is it? 11.2 kilobytes. Now remember, there's bits and bytes, but then once you start adding kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, the K was the bottom one. So this is a pretty small file. When did we create it? Has it been modified? When's the last time I opened it? And then we can do a few more advanced things that we can talk about in another class, or if you've ever opened a file that said it's read-only, you can look here in the properties and see if you click it or unclick it, you can select that or not. So when we have our File Explorer, which we talked about last week, how you open this and where you would look at it, it will open up where your files are kept. It's basically showing you inside the drawers of all of your file cabinet drawers. It'll say in this folder, there are 2 files. It gives you a little picture, right? The icon. It already gives you the first hint that says, oh, this is Microsoft Word, because that's the little W for Word. But if I didn't recognize what this was, I could come over here to this type and see Microsoft Word document. And so I know, oh, that's the program that's going to open it. When it was last modified, so the last time you saved it, and how big it is. Now, doc and docx are very, very common. If you've dealt with Microsoft Excel at all, it's a spreadsheet. You might see XLS or XLSX. You're seeing a file right now that's PowerPoint, PPT. It's like a slideshow. Text, again, we said, can be Notepad. It's very, very simple. It's letters and numbers, and that's pretty much it. There's not much formatting in there. There's not making it look nice or different types of fonts or anything like that. It's very, very simple. And then another really, really common extension is PDF, which opens with Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Reader. Over here you can see what that little icon looks like. And this is a very, very common way to share a document. We've probably all used this whether we knew we were doing it or not. If you've used music or movies on the computer, you've probably seen MP3, which opens in, there's a lot of different players that will play that music for you. Windows Media Player is a pretty common one, or iTunes that has files that are called MP3s. If you have seen video, there's a WMV, which stands for Windows Movie Maker, or Windows Media Video, sorry. And so that's a little video clip will have a WMV. And then for pictures, now this is where we've all probably already used these. You've heard people say JPEG, JPEG, or JPEG. It will open in a picture viewer, Windows Picture Viewer. It'll open in Photoshop. It'll open in sometimes on, it'll open in whatever picture viewer you have it set to. And PNG is a different type of picture. But it's very, very similar. It's just for using, putting a really high quality picture in a really small file. Now, if you see these and can't remember, it's like, what kind of computer program was this? There are so many of these different types of extensions, types of files. I've been working with computers for years, and I still will run into one every once in a while and go, what's a GMT file? I don't even know what. In that case, all I can say is Google is definitely your friend.
Same.
Now,
I've run
here's a
into,
special type of file that helps us put a lot of information in a small package. And to tell us about that is going to be, how do I stop my share? Susan.
all right. Thank you, Chris. Excellent job.
Uh-huh.
Are there any questions for what Chris has covered so far? If you have questions, please, again, feel free to put them in the chat. Or if you want us to answer a question out loud, feel free to raise your hand so that Rebecca can let us know that you have a question you'd like to say out loud. All right, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to open the PowerPoint again. And we'll talk a little bit about zip files. And you're right. I often have to look up what something is. If it's an unfamiliar file extension to me, that means the dot, whatever it is, puppies dot xt. I'd be like, I don't know what that is. So I would have to Google it as well. So the more familiar you become with file types and those extensions will happen the more and more you use computers. So let's see if we can get from current slide. No, okay, for whatever reason, it does not want to open.
I wonder
from
if you
current slide.
tried to just download that PDF version, that might be better.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save my PowerPoint, and I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to change this to PDF. So I'm going to change my file type. So my file type was .ppt. I'm going to go ahead and save it as a PDF instead, because sometimes PDFs are easier to open, and that's why you see that more often. So I am going to go ahead and see if this works for us to share it full screen, and we'll do that instead. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and come down here and get us to our section. We're going to talk about zip files. Okay, so what Chris was telling us about how big files are, sometimes you have a file or a folder that's full of files, and it's just so big that it takes a really long time for you to download it from the internet or get it from an email or from wherever you want, from OneDrive, wherever you need to get it from. So a zip file, if you've ever seen a folder on your computer that looks like a little folder and has a little zipper that goes up it, that is a zip file. And what a zip file is essentially a single file that contains a bunch of compressed files and folders. And it's in order to save storage space. So that the word compressed means that it's basically the computer has decided, okay, we're going to try to shrink this down as much as we can so that it can be transferred more quickly between computers than the uncompressed versions, okay? And zip files can be unzipped using File Explorer. So remember, File Explorer is your best friend for when you get one of these files that looks like this with that zipper. And so I'm going to actually show you quickly how, if you get a zip file, what you can do with it and how you can unpack it, basically. And that's the way I kind of like to think of it, is unpacking a zipped file. So there's a couple of steps you go through using File Explorer to open it. And you're going to basically use the term extract. So you're going to extract, which means you're going to pull all of those compressed files and basically uncompress them. And then save them somewhere on your computer. So what you'll have is you'll have that original file that is still compressed, and then you can extract it, and you're going to have all the multiple files that were included in that one file. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do this live, and feel free to ask questions if you'd like. So I'm going to go here, and we have a service here at the library called LinkedIn Learning, where it's a series of video tutorials. And I went ahead and was trying to learn some stuff with Photoshop. And there's some exercise files so that you can actually learn with the same files and same photos that the instructor is using. So it came with some files, and it basically was a zip file full of pictures. So what I had to do was I had to go into LinkedIn Learning and download the exercise files, which downloaded as a zip file like this one here. So then I can extract, so once I've highlighted it, again, that's selecting it. So I take my left mouse button and select that file. And you'll notice if you see what changes up above, we're changing from being in our downloads folder to having more options for what we can do with this file. And you'll see it says extract. And what I usually do is I right click, because I find this to be a little bit faster, to just hit extract all from here with right clicking, no matter where I am in here, but you can also do it by tapping right here where it says extract. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and right click and say extract all. And then it's going to ask me again, we have to, like Chris was saying, we have to give it an address, right? We have to give it a location on the computer so that we know where to find it. So right now, the default location is going to be that it's still going to put it into the downloads folder, but it's going to be unpacked. So I could browse for a different location and say, okay, I want to put them all on the desktop instead, and then put it in here. Or I could say, yes, I want to go ahead and put it in the downloads folder. I'm going to go ahead and say, put it on the, let's go ahead and we'll leave it in downloads. So we're going to go ahead and say select folder, which is the downloads folder. So now it's going to make sure that all of those files go into the downloads folder, and I'm going to hit extract. And then what's going to happen is so there's 96 photos, right? If I was to upload each one of those 96 photos, that would take a really long time to download. Plus, they're probably pretty big sized images because they want you to be able to get really quality editing skills that you're going to learn from that course. So we're going to go ahead and extract and download all of those, and then they're going to be put into our downloads folder. So you should see them in just a second. So now you can see there's the zip file here and the unzipped file here. And you'll notice, because these are actually two different files, they do have the same name, even though they're in the same place. But you can tell they're different because the one is zipped and the one is unzipped. Okay, if I was to open this, then I could see all of the photos that we're going to use, excuse me, for our demo in LinkedIn and Photoshop. Okay, if I try to open this one, I can still see them like this, but you note that you don't see the pieces, and it won't open because it's still part of that compressed file. So you want to make sure that you actually open them and extract them, okay, to make it easier for you. You can also create your own zip files if you need to or want to save space on your own computer or make it easier for someone to see the files that you're sending to them too. And to do that, you can use File Explorer. So we're going to come down here to our File Explorer. That's our manila envelope, again, our manila folder here. And if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to take some of those in here and I wanted to send just these 3 images to someone, but I wanted them to be able to be compressed, then I could actually make a zip file and send it to someone else. Okay, so it can go both ways. Okay, so if I wanted to keep these together, I could make it a zip file and put them all together. So, which we could do with share and then make it a zip. So if you see that little icon up here for zip, that's going to create that compressed zipped folder that contains the selected items. Okay, any questions about zip folders and files? I just wanted everybody to be aware, because I know sometimes you end up with files that you download and you're like, what is this? And that zip that looks like a little zipper is sometimes very confusing. So it just means that it's a compressed set of files, and you can extract to uncompress them so that then you can use them. And it's just hopefully faster and easier to download with it being that way. Okay, any questions about that? Oops.
What would be the advantage of creating zipped files? What would be the point of it?
Yes, so the biggest advantage is if you're sharing a large number of files with someone else, it's going to take a lot less time for them to put it on their own computer by downloading the zip file first, then extracting it, then taking those individual pictures and downloading each one of them. That's one of the big advantages. The other advantage is that if you're trying to save space on your own computer, zipping files together to then kind of archive them and put them to the side is another way to sort of save some storage space on the computer. Those are the 2 main advantages of it. Great question. Oh, and I wanted to go back to the PDF version. So I'm going to come back to here. Oh, where'd my PDF go? There it is. Sorry about that. Okay, so here, for example, this is our PDF. And if you notice down here, this little icon, this is the icon for Adobe. and it's opened in Adobe Acrobat Reader up here. Okay, so this little thing will just walk you through those steps we just did, where we downloaded the zipped file from the source, and it's going to go a lot faster than if I tried to download each one of those 96 files individually. Then I can locate it on the computer, find it in the folder, go ahead and extract it from that folder, and then pick a location where I want it to go, and then open them after. So you extract it, and then you can open them. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you because I know sometimes we'll see those file types out there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and spend a little time working with File Explorer. We spent a little time last week beginning with it, kind of the navigation. It's a very useful tool, so I do want to go ahead and spend a little more time with it and show you how there are a couple of other things you can do with it. Okay, so for those of you who weren't here last week, I'm just going to go through a quick little review here. The top section up here is called the ribbon. That's actually true in Microsoft Word and other programs as well. Your file path is going to be in the box right here where in our screenshot it says quick access. If I was to open File Explorer here and let's go to downloads, you can see up here that it's this PC and then downloads. That's known as the address or the file path. So it's basically the location of where your files are in the File Explorer. Okay, the navigation pane is along the left-hand side. That's a little bit like having each of your big filing cabinet and having each of the drawers, and each drawer is basically one of these locations down here. And then to be able to view the files and folders in each location, that'll be in this middle section here. So when I open File Explorer, and if I'm going to go to my downloads folder again, and I'm looking here, I can see the 2 files that we downloaded today, and then some other stuff that was downloaded last week into the downloads folder. Up here, we've got, again, the location is this PC, and the folder is downloads. Okay, now once you've done that, there's lots of other stuff you can do with the folders once you've got them in here, and the files that exist underneath them too. So we can search for files by using the search downloads over here. This would be searching the specific folder called downloads for whatever we've put in here. We can do that for documents, where we could search for a specific folder there too, desktop. We can basically search for different files or folders in here too. One thing I do want to show when I'm in my downloads folder here, and I'm going to go ahead and go in here so we can see some of the exercise files here. So for example, here's some photos from this LinkedIn course. And if I want to see the pictures here, I can see them in this view. If I come down here to the bottom corner, I can change the view from pictures and icons to icons and details of the files. So this is what Chris was showing us, where we can see the date, we can see the type of file, we can see the size of the file, and then if someone's given it some tags. Okay, so this is something I want to make sure everybody knows that they can do, because sometimes, especially if you have pictures, it can be hard to tell what the picture is of unless you're using the icon for pictures down here and you switch the view from details to large thumbnail images. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind. That's your file view choices. And you can do that up here as well in the tabs from File, Home, Share, and View. If you click on View, you can change those here in the Layout section, where I can say that I want medium icons, which makes them a little bit smaller, the large icons, or extra large icons, or we can do tiles, or we can do content, the list, or the details. So if you choose that details menu view option, that's going to give you the date that things were last modified, and it's going to tell you what kind of folders you have. So let's go back in there for a second. So you can see here, this is a compressed zipped folder, and then we have the regular file folder. Excuse me, goodness. Are there any questions about that?
I don't see any.
Okay, using File Explorer for that. Okay, you can also sort. Once you have things in here, you can sort by each of these different terms up here. So if I wanted to sort the things, I'm going to jump out of that real quick and come back into it. So if I wanted to sort, let's say I want to sort the things on my desktop. I can go into that resume to Walmart folder. Let's see. Oh, did I put the, oh, I didn't put the, okay, I'm going to put my, let me jump back here so you guys can see it on the desk. So I'm going to go ahead and move the Joan Smith resume to Walmart and cover letter to Walmart into that resume to Walmart folder. Okay. And now if I go into File Explorer and I go to the desktop and I'm looking at resume to Walmart, I can see those two files in here. And this view again is the view that gives me the details. So I can see the date it was modified, the type of file, the size. So if I wanted to sort things, and sometimes it comes down to when you're organizing your files and you're thinking about what you want to store in various storage options, you might decide you want to sort things by size. So you're going to take, you can, if everybody can see, I'm clicking right where it says size, and I'm sorting these ascending and descending, and I can switch. I can do this in the last time something was modified was. So a lot of times if you're going to have, you know, your resume to Walmart, and then you go in and you edit it, you change things and you save it again. And then you go, oh, it's been 6 months since I've applied for a Walmart. You can tell that because the date that it was last touched will be the last date it was modified. And that might help you decide whether or not you want to keep that file or you want to, you know, delete that file. Okay, so the file view sort is also useful to have around for when you need to sort by size. Okay, any questions about sorting by size?
I don't see anything.
Okay, you can also sort, of course, by the date modified or by the name, and you can do ascending or descending, which in this case it's would just switch, you know, C for cover, above R for resume, or vice versa. Okay, so once you have a whole lot of files in here, if you needed to search for something and you knew the beginning of what it was called, you could sort by name that way too and do it alphabetically. Okay, we're gonna jump back in here for a moment. Okay, so here's an example where we've taken a picture of a kitten. It's in our downloads folder, excuse me, and we've got a very extra large icon so that we can tell that it's a kitten. And here we've organized our files. So here's where we've sorted them by name, and you can see it reorders them by the name or by size or image. Okay. So the next thing we're talking about is your storage. Since this is a class about file storage, there are a couple ways to check your computer storage to see how much of your computer you've filled. And this will be true with laptops or desktop computers. Some things that might cue you in that your computer is running out of storage space. If your computer is really sluggish to respond to requests, if it tells you there's not enough room to run a program, sometimes I get this with Photoshop when I've gotten close to running out of space, and it'll tell me that the scratch disks are full, and that's because there's not enough memory on the storage space on the computer for the Photoshop to function and process all the information that I'm sending to it. If you get a message saying there's not enough room to install new programs, or not enough room to download or create new files, that's something else. This is also true for phones. If your phone tells you, you know, you're dangerously low on space, you're getting near the end of your space, then of course you have to go in and be like, okay, what do I remove from my phone? Do I remove a program, or do I remove an app, or do I remove some pictures or whatever else? Okay, so you can manually check your computer storage by going to File Explorer, this PC, local disk, and properties. So you remember we paid attention to properties for each of those individual files and folders to see, or files to see how much space they had taken up. You can do the same thing with your full computer too, by going and checking your properties. So here's in this screenshot example, the use space is in blue and the free space is in gray. So we're doing pretty well for this particular example of being able to say, okay, we're not too close to being too full with our storage in the regular computer, okay? So you can also enable, if you have a Windows 10 computer, you can enable something called Storage Sense by going to your settings and your system and storage. And then that will tell you, Storage Sense kind of enables the system to tell you when you're getting low on space. Okay, so if I was to do this on my Windows 10 PC right here, I could go into File Explorer, go down to this PC, right click and say Properties. It's going to pull up some properties. It may or may not let me do this on the work computer here. Let's see if I can check our storage. Here's how you could turn on storage sense, excuse me. And we'll check storage settings and see. Yeah, so here's my storage settings, which tells me this is how much space we've used and how much is free. And then this goes ahead and actually breaks it down by the documents, pictures, music, temporary file, you know, all the stuff that's on there. Okay. Okay, so that's a good chance to, if you're thinking about storage and you're optimizing for, you know, whether or not you have files that you could take off the PC, you could look at that. Okay, any questions about storage space and how to check it?
No.
Okay, I do recommend doing this occasionally, but especially once you start to get those messages that say, you know, there's not enough or you're getting low on space. Okay, all right. The first thing that you can do if you get a message on space is to make sure you've emptied your recycle bin. If you put something in the recycle bin, it actually will stay there until you empty the bin. So just like at your own home desk where you have a trash can and you've crumpled up a piece of paper and you've thrown it in the trash can, it still lives in that trash can until you empty the trash, right? So your computer files work the same way. They are still taking up space on that computer until you delete them from the recycle bin or you empty the bin. You can also restore files. So if you accidentally move something to the recycle bin, before you empty it, you can go in and say restore, and that'll restore a file. So I'm going to show you that real quick with, let's say, our resume to Walmart. So I'm going to go ahead and take, let's say I don't need the cover letter anymore. I've gotten the job. Everything's great. I can go ahead and drag and drop it in the recycle bin and move it into the recycle bin. And then, so I've taken it from the folder, moved it over here. I can open the recycle bin again by double clicking, and I can see that it's here. I can go ahead and empty my recycle bin if I want, and that'll send it away. Or I can click on it and say, restore the selected item. If I hit restore the selected item, the computer recognizes that, oops, maybe I didn't mean to put it in the recycle bin. I just accidentally moved it there, and then I can move it back over here. Okay? Any questions on recycle bin? That's the first place I always look if I'm running low on storage, is to go, oh, have I emptied my recycle bin in a while?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. The next place I usually look if I'm running low on space is my downloads folder. And the downloads folder is where most of, if you haven't changed it, it's usually the default location for all of your files that you've downloaded from the internet. So that includes pictures that have been emailed to you, if you've downloaded a resume template, if you've downloaded, let's see, what else? Music, anything like that. When you first, well, not music, because that'll go into your whichever folder you put it in for iTunes or whatever. So, but for the most part, if you download something from the internet or from email, it's going to wind up first in your downloads folder. Okay, and then you can also upload things to the internet to send to someone else through email or otherwise. Okay, so just an idea for if you're unfamiliar with the terms download and upload, you've probably already done it and just not realized that that's what it was called. But to download is basically taking a file from the internet and putting it on your physical computer or device. And then uploading would be taking something that's on your physical computer, like a file or a photo or something, and then you're gonna put it somewhere on the internet. So you might attach it to an email and send it to a friend. So most files, again, from the internet or email will go into the downloads folder by default, unless you select another location. So when we were talking a little bit earlier about how I downloaded that zip file from LinkedIn Learning, and it went here into my downloads folder, that's right here. And then there's several other things that we've downloaded here at work to go into this downloads folder. So I recommend checking your downloads folder to see if everything that's in there is all stuff you still need. And if it's all stuff you need, maybe it needs to go in a different location than the downloads folder. Once it's been in here, you can actually move it somewhere else. So for example, if I want to take the Photoshop files, and let's say I actually want to move them to a folder that's called Photoshop Training. So I'll come over here and make a new folder, call it Photoshop Training, and then I can move that out of there and put it in there. Then I don't need, let's say I don't need this anymore because I've got all the files in my Photoshop Training, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll send this to the recycle bin. So I'll go ahead and drag it and drop it in the recycle bin. Okay, so let me jump back in here. So when you download and upload files, and I can show this if anyone's not familiar with how to download a file, I will show that real quick so we can watch that live in action. I have our demo account here for the library, and I have a message that I sent to myself with a puppy. Okay, so here's our puppy file. So this was sent to me. So if I want to download this image of a puppy, you know, you may have images of your pets as well that you've sent to others. All I have to do to download it is hit this little down arrow here, and that will go ahead and download it to my computer. Okay, and now our browser puts it down here. But we don't need to do that because we're going to look for it in our downloads folder. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And now we're going to look for it. So we're going to come over to File Explorer again, and we're going to go to Downloads, and there it is. There's our puppy. In fact, I want to see the cute puppy, so I'm going to change this over to where I can see the picture. Okay, and now I can see the picture. I could go ahead and open it. It's going to open down here, hopefully. Oh, now what happened there? Let's open. Okay, not sure why I couldn't open that. But anyway, it's there, and it's in the downloads folder. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close out of that. There it is, down over here. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close out of that again. All right, so does anyone have any questions about where the downloads go? And remember, I go through once every month or so, and I go in and I clean out my downloads folder, take stuff out of there that I don't need there, organize stuff, move it around, and basically clean it out. Okay, you
I
could
don't
do the
see any
same thing.
questions.
Okay, you could do the same thing if you wanted to upload it or send it to someone or attach a file. Same idea. In your email, you usually just look for the paper clip or the upload button. So it looks like a little paper clip. And then you navigate to where it is on your computer and you upload it. So if I was to do that here, I can send one to myself. So let's go ahead and I'm going to compose a new message, and I'm going to send it to myself. I'm going to call it puppy. Yay, puppy. I know, is everyone surprised I didn't pick cats today? We're going to say puppy, and we're going to come down here and attach the file. And then when we go to look for it, we're going to look for it in our downloads folder because that's where it's already living. We'll select it and we'll say open, and it's going to add it, and then I can send it. Okay, and that's going to send. So when Chris was talking earlier about, and then here's my image, and there's my puppy, where I could basically do the cycle all over again if I wanted to. Earlier when Chris was talking about how sometimes your email will tell you, oh, that file's too large, I can't send it. That will happen with large photos, or if you try to attach, 2 to 5 to 6 photos, because each of these photos, again, it takes up a certain amount of space, and your email server may or may not have enough capability to send more than 1 or 2 at a time. So that's when you might also consider using cloud storage, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, for when we talk about backing things up as well. Okay, but first, any questions about downloading and uploading?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, so here are some things to consider for your storage. Different storage options are going to be based on the need for access to those files and the security of the files. So, for example, I'm going to go through a list of physical possibilities of device storage. But the problem with physical device storage is, one, you have to know where you've put it or be able to find it again. And you have to make sure it's secure somehow for you, so you don't just, if you brought a flash drive, for example, to the library, which is a small device that you could put files on, and you forgot it here at the library, that's a security vulnerability for your files. You also, if you put stuff up in the cloud, which we'll talk about in just a moment, that's another form of, knowing whether or not testing the security of those files based on whichever service you end up using. Okay. You also want to consider the cost of each option and the ongoing costs to maintain each option. So if you consider the cloud as a storage option, usually those are subscription based and you pay monthly or yearly for the service. Whereas a finite thing like a flash drive probably costs, depending on how big it is, maybe $15, $20 up to $100 for something really big. Okay. There are manual and automatic forms of storage and backup. And a lot of times people use those terms interchangeably with storage and backup, but they really mean two different things. Storage is, you can think of like a storage locker or garage where you might store your extra furniture, for example. And backing up would be essentially taking a copy of all of the things that you had in that storage locker and physically moving it off the site of that storage locker into a separate storage locker. Okay. Storing it. Okay. So when you back something up, you're basically making a copy that's going to go somewhere else than your actual physical storage on your device. Okay. The automatic forms of storage and automatic forms of backing up, there are some services out there that you could consider that do it without you having to think about it and just sync up with the computer, which means they basically scan your computer every so often and pick the files that are new and add them. And that's synchronizing or syncing if that's right for you, or you can pick and choose what files you want to put into a form of backup. Okay, and all of these are things to consider because there's a finite amount of storage that you can get. There's a finite amount of storage on your physical computer. There's a finite amount of storage on physical storage devices that you can move from place to place. And there's a finite amount of storage in the cloud that you can get for free, and then you pay and pay and pay for more. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense. So when you're backing something up, it's important to know that backing up files is going to be important because what if your device gets stolen? What if it fails? What if you end up being a victim of ransomware where someone basically says, I've encrypted your files, you can't open them until you pay me money? You could have software issues or bugs that could delete files. So it's a good idea, and I should have added here too, if you upgrade from one computer to another computer, it's a good idea to back up those files so that you can put them on the new one. Okay, and then you have to consider what you want to back up. If you want to only back up important personal files, or you want to back up all of the software programs on your computer, your operating system. If you want to back all of that stuff up, it's going to take up more space. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to have a little show and tell. I'm going to go ahead and move that down, and I'm going to stop sharing and turn on my camera so I can show everybody. Oops, come over here, and then I can show everybody. Let me turn on my video. Okay, so I have a little show and tell of some of the different possibilities for storage that's outside of your main computer. So you may have seen CDs. CDs are not used as much anymore because there are other options that are a little bit less easily damaged. With CDs, it's pretty easy to scratch a CD. So if you had all of your files backed up on one of these and it got a scratch on it, or it fell and broke, it'd be pretty hard to replace those files. Okay, but they're still here and you can still use them if you want. So I mentioned flash drives. Here's a little flash drive. It's also known as a thumb drive or a jump drive. And they come in different sizes. So again, we talked at the beginning about gigabytes and kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, and terabytes. So you can find flash drives nowadays that are either a couple gigs up to like 500 gigs if you really wanted. So if you had a whole bunch of music that you wanted to back up, you could back it up to a flash drive. Then you have a physical backup copy. Okay. If you do anything with photography, you probably have seen, this is called an SD card, and it has a certain amount of memory and storage on it that usually you can use for photos. And then you take those photos off of this little card and you can put them on your computer or some other form of storage, right? Because the last thing we want to do is lose all the awesome pictures we've taken. Your phone, if you have a smartphone, probably has one of these in it. It's a little micro SD card. Some of them will have it internally where you can't remove it, and some of them you can remove them. And you can store stuff on these as well. They're little tiny ones. And sometimes you have to get adapters, like this is my adapter, that will let me put the micro SD card into a computer. And then you have external hard drives. Your computer comes with an internal hard drive where you can store everything. But then for a physical backup that you can take to another location, you might use an external hard drive, which basically means you plug in this end to the computer and you move and copy your files over. So that then they're all on this one. And you take this and put it, in a safe place. Okay, so this is one. This is called a external hard drive. And this is an external solid state drive. These are a little bit more expensive, but it's because this one doesn't have any moving parts inside it, whereas this one has some moving parts inside it. And so it can fail a little bit more often than the other kind. Okay, and of course, they're always developing. Only constant in technology is change, right? So they're always developing new storage methods and new backup techniques and things like that. So it's good to keep that in mind as well as you go along, that, while I might have saved everything on CDs 6 years ago, now I save everything to that solid state external hard drive. Okay. If you don't want a physical storage or backup option, you can also look at cloud storage. And so now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And we'll talk a little bit about cloud storage. And feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way too at this point. So here's our internal hard drive. You can see it has a spinny disk and some other pieces that move around. And that stores your operating system, software, and all your personal files. The CD or DVD and Blu-ray discs. So there's our flash drive or jump drive. Okay, the SD card and the micro SD card. So this one would be in your camera. This one might be in your phone. And then the external hard drive that just plugs into the computer. Solid state drives are known as SSD, and the external hard drives that have the moving pieces are the HDDs. Okay. All right, any questions about physical storage pieces or physical backups?
No.
The general rule of thumb is 3 places. So if you have, for backing up stuff, if you have one on your computer where all your files are kept, then you could have one that's maybe on site but in a fireproof storage box, or you have it off site in a safety deposit box, and then maybe a cloud service. Okay, so I'm going to get into that now. I realized I should have switched the slide. Sorry about that. Okay, so your online backups and cloud storage is basically a network system to store the files and data using the internet. So the files and programs exist off-site, i.e. they're on a server stored somewhere else by whatever company you've decided to go with. But then you can access them and download them to any device anywhere, which is nice because, if you came to the library to use one of our computers, and let's say you had your resume stored in the cloud, you could get to it by logging into whatever cloud service you have, and then you'd be able to edit it and work on it here at our computers. Okay. A lot of companies do offer cloud storage for consumers for a free or fee-based scale determined by the amount of space you need. So the more space you need, the more it may cost. So, and here are just a couple examples. It's not an exhaustive list. It's good to research the various options and costs and security features to find out what's right for you. And we do have some PC Magazine articles that are linked in our additional resources section where they've evaluated some of these. Okay, so we're just kind of scratching the surface here a little bit. Scratching the surface of not a CD, but just tip of the iceberg for things to consider. Okay. So your best practice suggestions for storage and backing up. You've got to consider your limitations, both for your physical device and whatever you end up buying to be the place where you back up or store other things. Okay. Making a plan and following through is very important. Just like taking time to organize the files on your computer, it is a good idea to make a plan and follow through with backing up and your computer occasionally, however often you decide you want to do it. And like I said, redundancy is important. So that 3-2-1 rule is basically having 3 sources of that file, especially the really important ones. 2 of them can be on-site, 1 of them should be off-site. Okay, so that way, if you had a house fire, for example, your computer might be melted, but you would still have, if you have a fireproof safe, you'd still have the copy in your fireproof safe. If you had an online version or a version stored in the safety deposit box, important files. Okay, so again, along the lines of making a plan and following through is to schedule a regular time to back up, either using manually taking new files over, or you can automate that process. Okay. Consider what files you definitely need to have on your computer at all times. And maybe if it's not a file that you access very often, but you need to have it to reference it maybe once a year, maybe that's something you could put as what we would call offsite storage. We do this with books sometimes too. A lot of libraries, when they run out of physical space for books, they will have an offsite storage facility where they'll put books that aren't as commonly checked out. And then if they get requested, then they bring them over. Okay. Dealing with your downloads folder is a very good idea. It's going to save you space in the long run. And then you can delete the things you no longer need to look at, or you can file them and go back to file storage and organization and put them where they need to be. Okay. Consider what files you want to back up. Do you want to back up only those really important special photographs, or do you want to back up all the photos, even the ones where your thumb might have been in the image or something? Okay, so you can be selective or comprehensive. That's totally up to you and what you think you need. Okay. Knowing the terms for your backup supplier. So for example, if you're using a company like Backblaze or Dropbox or Google Drive, just making sure you know a little bit about the terms and the security methods and the potential issues with using each of those services. And if you want, we can help you do the research part of this for different companies and help you find articles from industry professionals who go in and work with these things and can tell you which ones are, the best ones that they would recommend. Okay, and then we've got some additional resources. There's a tutorial on files and folders and moving and dragging and dropping. PC Magazine has a list of their best online backup services for 2021. That includes both backup services where you just set it and it's automated and the backup service scans your computer every so often and just adds the new stuff since the last time it was backed up, and also the ones where you can do it manually and pick and choose what you want to put up there. Okay. And then Microsoft Support has the tips to free up space, things like freeing up your temporary files and other things there too. Okay. And then I also threw in how to back up your Mac, but we will actually have a class. Rebecca is going to teach a class in January about the same theories here for file storage and organization for Mac computers. So if you have a Mac and you're interested, feel free to, I don't think it's been published yet, but once it's published and on the calendar, you can sign up for that too. So, okay. And then the upcoming webinars, we're going to switch gears from the physical laptop, desktop computers to talking about phones and tablets. So we will have a class on social media on Instagram at the beginning of the month, and then the rest of the month we'll be doing iPhones and iPads, Android phones and tablets, and Kindles. Ooh, that was a lot of talking. Okay. I'm happy to open it up to questions and let other people speak at this point, because I know that was a lot. So, and then there's my contact information as well. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. Would anyone like to see anything else or have any questions?
You can always raise your hand too if you don't want to write a message in the chat.
Absolutely. You know, I know there was a lot of stuff to put out into the world there too. So if it's seems overwhelming, that's okay. You can always rewatch the video, take it chunk by chunk too, for these different topics. And again, this is sort of the introduction to it. So there's a lot of deep dives that you can do into each of these individual areas of, you know, we do teach a class on cloud storage specifically. So you're welcome to attend that when we have it next. And we do, you know, we're always available for book a librarian appointment, so we can meet with you one-on-one to go over anything we covered today and go over things in more detail too.
We do have a question. How safe and secure is cloud storage?
Great question, yes. It depends a lot on the company that you choose to put your data with. And I recommend looking at their terms of service and what the tech industry folks have said about each of those companies as well, to sort of get an idea and kind of pick from there. Sometimes it comes down to, you know, there are some that have a certain amount for free that you can start and work with, and then check the reviews, see how you like it, and then there's more security features once you've paid for a subscription with them too, for some of them. Some of them offer password protection for files, that if you share it with someone else, they will have to put in a password to get to it. Some of them don't offer that. Some of them do with a paid subscription, and some, you know, it comes with the free version. And so it just depends. It's really, PC Magazine has that PC Magazine article is a pretty good place to start for researching the cloud storage options. And we do talk about them a little bit more in our cloud storage class. For me, I tend not to put things in cloud storage that I think would be susceptible to, you know, like my personal information possibly getting to someone else that I didn't want to have it. That's my general rule of thumb, just like anything on the internet, right? So if I put something up there, I'm not likely to put my, you know, bank statements into cloud storage. But that's me personally. I know several people who do and feel totally comfortable with that. So it's also a little bit of the amount of personal risk that you're willing to take on, just like anything else where, you know, if you get behind the wheel of a car, you're taking a certain amount of risk there too. So I would recommend, if you like a company that seems like a good option, check the reviews for that company online, and check the PC Magazine, Tech Trends, digital trends, and see if they've said anything. Or a lot of watchdog organizations within the tech industry will also put something out if they're a little concerned about the security or privacy settings for certain cloud storage too. I know it doesn't really say yes or no, but
it's definitely worth it to do your research, because you're putting all of your personal info up there, right? So you want to make sure you are, you know, up on whatever it is you're using.
Yes. And while, for example, I may not put bank statements up there, I do put photos up there that I then share with my family members. You know, and then after I've shared them with the family members a little bit later, I do actually go ahead and delete those albums. You know, once they've gotten them and they've had the chance to download them, I delete them out of there. But that's, again, me personally, and everybody's going to have their own method and process of what they do and how they store things. So, great question. And we do talk a little bit about that too in our Intro to Internet workshop as well, about some of the security issues and things that you might run into with the internet and storing things online. Other questions? I know that was a lot, and we didn't take a break today either. Usually we take a 5-minute break somewhere around 3 o'clock or so. So I apologize. I went right through that. So thank you to everyone for sticking with us.
I don't see any other questions, but if something comes to you after class, feel free to reach out. We're usually always available either by email or you can send a. Oh, looks like there's another question here.
Sure.
Is there an actual physical place where this cloud storage is held? Since there are companies that have cloud storage, is there a place? Yes. Most.
So, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was going to say, their cloud storage is storage that these companies have bought and sort of placed these servers at. So with a bigger company, like for instance with Google or Apple, there might be multiple locations so that if one of them fails, they have the other one as a backup. So that's the advantage of sort of these bigger companies, right? They'll have more money to invest in that server infrastructure so that your stuff is conceivably more safe if something fails. So yes, there is a physical place where your storage is held. You're basically kind of sending it off and they're kind of keeping it there. It's sort of like, I don't know, like you would do like a garage storage, like maybe like at a, what a you store it kind of a place where you're storing your stuff, but someone else is kind of taking that space elsewhere.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, most of them, if you Google server farms too, most of those big companies that do this for people have these big server farms where essentially it's a building full of computer servers that then are there to basically, and huge cooling systems too, because of course the computers will get hot because they're running on batteries, and or not batteries, but they're generating a lot of heat from all the energy. So they have big cooling systems. And when we teach the cloud storage class, I recommend to folks that if they get a chance to visit the supercomputing center here on campus, it's really an amazing tour that they do. Usually it's during the open house, engineering week open house, where they will offer tours and you can go in and you can actually see all these servers that are processing data from all over the place, and you can see all the cooling systems that they have and everything. And it's really quite fascinating, even for folks that maybe aren't as interested in the technology itself, but just to go in there and be like, wow, that's a lot of
it gives you a behind the scenes kind of behind the scenes look.
Yes, yeah. And if I can I'll plug that again too, for what they do is a lot of, when we were talking about higher than terabytes of data, they are generating much higher bits of data than even terabytes to do all these renderings. They have other
fancier words for it. I don't know what they are.
Yes, and doing renderings of computer models of like how the Earth was formed, for one example that I've seen.
They tell you, I think if you go to their website, they tell you what they're computing at that time and who for.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's very fascinating.
But
again,
back in the day, I had those little square floppy disks. You guys, they call them floppy. Those weren't floppy. Those were hard. Those little plastic disks. And I still have those. And I could fit maybe 3 pictures on them. And it was like a few kilobytes each. I mean, the pictures, it was like, and we just come so far as now, there was no thought. It's like, no one will ever need a terabyte of storage, except now you can go to the store and buy that easily.
Yes.
So
everything as we have just so high quality that you need the space.
Right. Yeah. And of course that's one of the things about the nature of tech, and as it changes and the quality gets better, is that you do have to think about your backup options. And like I said, I have a bunch of stuff from like my Windows Vista computer on a CD, and I'm like, well, that's not going to help me with those stories that I wrote in high school or whatever. If I still want to know, I still want to keep those examples of my early creative work for whatever purpose. It should really transfer it to the
I still have a bunch of CDs that I should probably get pictures off of that I have at my parents' house from like I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and scanning, now you can scan your physical photos And then what are you going to do with those scans? Then it's a digital file and you want to back that up so you have it. I mean, you know, if I keep thinking about, you know, like photo albums, and it's all of that stuff. If you can scan those and save them in a digital format, put them in a safety deposit box or something off site, you know they're going to be safe and you can access them again in the future. And that's something I think a lot of folks like to look at, you know, photos and bring them, you know, show them to people and everything. So,
and that's kind of the nice thing
you know.
too about cloud, is that you don't have to worry about the format changing so much, like with a CD, right? Not a lot of computers nowadays come with CD drives. So with something that's in the cloud, you don't have to worry about the format going out of trend or not working with a computer in the future. Hopefully these things will be more, you know, able to be passed on as time goes.
And of course, someday that may not be the case, because of course we don't know what the future
Who
holds for
knows? Yeah,
backing stuff up.
exactly.
But at least
That's why it's good to stay.
cautiously optimistic that at least for the next 10 years, cloud
It's good to
storage is
stay
still
on
going to
top of
be
it too. You
a
know, you
good
don't
way to
want
do
to.
it.
It's good to stay on top of things
Yes.
because, of course, all of those CDs that I have from 15 years ago, I got to go dust off and figure out if I can actually get them off of that CDs.
Yes. And that's why we have workshops like this, because we can stay somewhat up to date, so that if you just want to check in the future, you can always attend the workshop again, and learn what's new or what's the big thing that everybody's talking about for, you know, storing stuff in the future. In the library world, microfilm is still very popular as a way to archive old newspaper articles. And now those are moving online, but the advertisements aren't necessarily there, or they've only done certain parts of certain newspapers. So there's still a gap there too, with things going to the online world too. So hopefully everything will eventually be all online, right? We still like physical books here too.
All right.
Well, I don't see any other questions, so I guess I'll go ahead and we'll call it a day. But of course, if you have questions later, just reach out to us. We're happy to help with any additional questions.
And again, we'll send out that recording pretty soon. And if you'd like a physical copy of the handout too, we're happy to print those out and have them here for you at the desk, or you can pick them up curbside too. And eventually we'll have this class again. When we have it again in person, we'll let everybody go ahead and, you know, create files and folders and play with searching for them and finding them and doing all of that stuff.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
Bye,
Jess.
everyone.
Bye.